Time to talk all things fantasy football. We do it every single Friday live. And welcome aboard everybody who's jumping into the room now or is already there. Please feel free to get into the comments and ask some questions because we're talking fantasy football for the next half hour with our fantasy insider from RotoWire.com. Let's welcome in the one, the only, the indomitable Joe Bartel. Hello, Joseph. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I thought last night's game was a lot of fun overall, so that's a good way to kick off the week for sure.
Old man football, man. You could have played either one of those two quarterbacks. I could have in the Chumps League, Joe. I'm desperate. I'm actually playing Spencer Rattler as my starter in the Chumps League until Lamar gets back next week, I hope. Oh, my goodness. I could have gone with one of the old guys. I would have been okay for crying out loud.
Yeah, Rodgers I thought was an obvious streaming candidate this week, and I'm glad that it paid off because you could get those dicey plays on Thursday, and if it doesn't work out, it's like, oh man, I wish I would have done this. But in hindsight, you get that leverage play right away to start the week, and I think Flacco was one of those two that if you were in a pinch, like I would have played Flacco over Spencer Rattler. Not that I thought your choice was wrong by any means, but the way that they marched up and down the field against the Packers, I don't think the Steelers' defense is that much better. I'm glad there was a lot of fantasy impact from all the usual cohorts, and also getting like the at least okay T Higgins game, okay Chase Brown game, and even getting some Jonnu Smith involved too. That's good as well.
Yeah, even some kicker magic last night. 17 points against me, Joe, to start the week by the kicker. That's all I had at play against me last night, and I had to watch that kick after kick after kick. Oh man, that hurt.
Well, yeah. Deal with what I have to do every week, it feels like on Thursdays. Yeah.
Which is good. Which,
you
by the way,
last week, though, we got to talk about that. But go ahead. We'll get to it.
That's true. And I just want to, start here when it comes to Thursday night football. So there's a lot of fantasy analysts out there, none like Joe Bartel, obviously, but there's a bunch of people out there in the universe. And I was scrolling on Twitter and I came across this video and it just grabbed me. So I'm like, all right, you've got me for 60 seconds, whoever you are. And this fantasy analyst, I'll leave him unnamed. He went, here are the everyone's talking about this. Here are the three players you need to trade off your roster. Sell them while you can. And I'm like, all right, I'm in. Go. Who is it? And he's like, number one, Jamar Chase. Get rid of his ass. Joe Flacco is old and all this stuff. And he's like, you got to trade Jamar Chase. And I watched that. I paused the video. I roll with. I am dying on my Jamar Chase hill. I took him number one overall. I'm not sending him anywhere. So screw you, random fantasy analysts. I'm not shipping him. Is there any credence? I'm leaving this guy unnamed unless you want to beat up this anonymous fantasy guy. Like, is there any credence to potentially having sold Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow maybe never coming back this season? So what's sort of your thought process?
No, I keep Jamar Chase. I think the whole year I had been steadfast in the T Higgins part of things too, that whatever you give up for T Higgins or get back, it wouldn't have been enough for if the situation turns around, or if Jake Browning, for example, ended up being a competent quarterback, and that never happened, but at least Joe Flacco has been. No, if anything, I actually would be more willing to trade Justin Jefferson, who had been kind of on like a ceiling play for a couple weeks with Carson Wentz, and now with JJ McCarthy, theoretically, if not back this week, back soon. I just have my reservations about the Vikings offense working well. Even then, I don't want to do that because I have so much faith in Kevin O'Connell and being able to operate an offense, especially with McCarthy. But I thought the first couple of weeks there were massive limitations, and they were playing it safe. So you look at the top couple of receivers, Jamar Chase, Josh Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, theoretically coming back from injury. We should be in a ramp-up period now from a fantasy perspective. And no, I would have probably stopped listening to the video after the recommendation started first with Jamar Chase, because in my mind, he's going to be on my season. He's going to be on my team for the entire season.
All right, fair enough. Jamar Chase, keep him. Plus, you don't want to sell low anyway. I mean, he was kind of low. You don't want to sell low on a guy like that. You got to hang on. And you tell me, Joe, who out there in the world of football is going to get that many targets in a game? I mean, he's one of two or three, maybe. Nakua probably would be on that list. He gets targeted like there's no tomorrow. JSN, who's having a great start to the season, perhaps I could see a game or two where he got targeted that much. But, I mean, that was insane targeting last night. That was crazy.
Well, and the person who leads second in the NFL in targets, Chris Olave. Even though Chris Olave doesn't have nearly the games with JSN and Jamar Chase, it's so funny. Yeah, I mean, the volume of targets is important, right? Volume is king in fantasy. My friend Jim Coventry, who does a great job at RotoWire, says the same thing all the time, and that applies to the receivers, that applies to the running backs, tight ends. Volume is king, and I think that matters a lot too. But it also is the quality of targets of the person throwing the ball, and I think that's where the upgrade from Jake Browning to Joe Flacco has been. And I think there'll be, I think defenses are going to have to play things a little bit differently. Again, I watched my Packers last week. I knew that was going to happen. I was not surprised at all. Those competitive game towards the end. There are going to be ways to play Joe Flacco better, but if you can't get home and he could just hit these quick 3-yard slants or whatever to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that will be the benefit of the Bengals offense for the foreseeable future. I think defenses have to play them differently, but I guess I don't know how they'll choose to do so.
Which makes a lot of sense. Let's go to I see some fan questions already coming up in here. So let me go to Bill, the produce guy on our YouTube channel. Appreciate you, Bill. Joe, I need 3 wide receivers and a flex. So we're about to throw up a lot of names that you can also read here. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, Jerry Jeudy, Tez Johnson. Mostly asking if Evans can't play, which by all Buccaneers reports, he's apparently expected to play on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, he might need to, too, especially with the Lions down 4 guys and then Brian Branch for being stupid. I think you have to have Mike Evans out there as well. So in my mind, it's St. Brown, it's London, it's Waddle, and Evans. And the good news is that if Evans is, for whatever reason, not available, you can slot in Tez Johnson, who I think is the preferred guy of that group. I think that foursome, again, St. Brown, London, Waddle, Evans is the way I'd go. And I am very nervous about what could be like ridiculous weather circumstances in Cleveland for that Dolphins game. Almost to the point where maybe I would bench Waddle, but I wouldn't bench him for Jerry Jeudy, who's also in a similar weather circumstance. So it's going to be bleak if you're, I think, starting anybody, but I loved Quinshon Judkins this week. Obviously, Devon Achane's been awesome too. I'm very nervous about that game from a weather perspective.
Let's talk about that indomitable tight end position, Joe. We talk about it every single year. So has it shaping up this year? Who are the front runners? Who are the guys you think could bounce back here in the second half? We know Bowers has been really banged up, expected back in a couple of weeks, it looks like. So let's talk about how that tight end thing might shake out by the time the year ends.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler Warren's probably one of the more consistent guys right now at the position, and he was like a round 9 pick and like tight end 10 or whatever it was, and the person who took Tyler Warren probably jumped a few people because they really liked him, for example. Other than that, it's been tough. George Kittle theoretically coming back this week, that'll aid things a little bit, but you mentioned Brock Bowers being banged up. He's been banged up all season. I'm glad the Raiders are choosing to bench him now, and then they have the bye week next week. Hopefully he gets back healthy. I think Trey McBride's going to have a monster game, like 14 for 100 and a touchdown against the Packers, but he's been a little bit disappointing as well too. And I think that's the overall part of it. So you drafted Bowers and McBride early because you thought you would get a significant advantage at a position that otherwise has a lot of volatility. Well, what happens if literally every tight end is volatile on a week-to-week basis? It's the reason why I wasn't drafting Bowers and McBride where they were going ADP-wise. And while I haven't been able to correctly get the guy, I thought it was Mason Taylor, I thought it was Juwan Johnson. They've had stints, and maybe Mason Taylor will with Garrett Wilson out for whatever duration of time this will be. But it's been brutal, and it really is just a touchdown game at this point. So if you get the Hunter Henry touchdown, you get the Tucker Kraft touchdown, that's been really feels like the saving grace for a lot of people outside of maybe the top 2 guys right now.
Yeah, we saw it a lot in that Pittsburgh game last night, Joe. I mean, Aaron Rodgers loves the tight end. He's throwing all kinds of tight ends on that team.
Yeah, I mean, the offense otherwise has 0 pieces outside of DK Metcalf. So I think it's less to do about Aaron Rodgers liking Darnell Washington and Jonathan Smith and more about the Steelers entering the year with basically no pass catchers outside of Metcalf. And I think we're seeing that play. Rodgers is good enough to identify a defense and then figure out where the target is that's open. And that's why Jonathan Smith, I thought, was a good trade for the Steelers because he could be used more in that way. Arthur Smith just refuses to have volume, end up getting associated to those tight ends, unlike we saw for the Dolphins last year. So yeah, I mean, that's, and like Noah Fant getting some run as well too. That's what happens when the score is 34-31 at 65 points. You're going to have a lot of tight ends get involved just by default.
Joe, what the hell do you do with the Carolina Panthers situation? So Rico Dowdle has been insane the last 2 weeks. I mean, nearly 500 total scrimmage yards. And if you're Carolina, how could you possibly put that guy on the bench? But you also paid Chubba Hubba a bunch of money. So, you got to use him too. And this Jets defense has historically been, I know last week they performed very well, but historically they've been terrible so far this season. So if you're a Panthers owner of either guy, what do you do?
It's a great question. I think we'll have a lot more clarity this week, but I'm very nervous as somebody that has Chuba Hubbard in one of my big leagues. Been really disappointing because I didn't get Rico Dowdle to sort of benefit from that. And if you've been kind of trying to slog through the running back and receiver and flex injuries, Rico Dowdle the past 2 weeks has been literally a godsend. You would think after the historic 2-week stretch that Dowdle has had, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. I mean, Chuba Hubbard was fine for the Panthers. That was not the reason the Panthers were stinking earlier this year, but he hasn't been getting 500-plus total yards from scrimmage over the past 2 weeks. Now, the defenses, like you mentioned, what they played the past 2 weeks, that is a part of it. I think it's going to be a 60-40 split with Rico Dowdle being the guy that gets a bit more of the touches, but I don't know. And this week, you would want to play probably both Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle if you have to. You're going to have some bye week conundrums here in week 8 and week 9 with 10 teams on bye, where maybe you're playing the Panther guys even still, but you're hoping for 30-point plus games from the Chuba Hubbards and Rico Dowdles when they're individuals. Well, now as a committee, I don't think that'll happen, and there's going to be harder matchups to come. So it's going to be a frustrating spot. I would be happy to trade Rico Dowdle if somebody was giving me basically running back 2 price, because I don't think that's going to happen in the future. But the only part that's lingering in my mind, calf injuries on both legs, is one of those things I would be like, oh, that's not good. That's going to stick around all year, right? Like, okay, great, he's had 3 weeks to heal. That makes me just slightly nervous. And if Chuba Hubbard misses more time, Rico Dowdle is the running back 1, obviously is a good spot. So I don't know what this is going to look like. I have a feeling we're going to be far more aware of the Carolina backfield in week 8, but it's still going to be frustrating.
Joe Bartel, not a lot of love for your Jets defense there, Boy Green, I would have to say.
He also didn't have love for his Jets defense. I don't feel like I'm like putting...
They actually looked good. That was the one part of their team that looked good last week.
Because the Saints weren't doing anything. It's like, what happens if my 4-year-old was playing Madden against me? I don't have to do anything against him. I'm just going to keep calling runs up the middle to make sure I don't throw a pick 6 or something dumb like that.
We're talking with Joe Bartel. Today's broadcast is brought to you by our friends at Box Drop Syracuse, the mattress and sofa outlet. Let's just take 30 seconds, learn a little bit more about our friends from Box Drop.
Considering that we sleep nearly 1/3 of our lives, buying the right mattress is essential. At Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofa Outlet, you'll get a unique experience, one that saves you 30 to 70% off retail prices on top-of-the-line mattresses like Sapphire Sleep. At Box Drop, you'll schedule a mattress fitting appointment and get one-on-one service directly with Paul, the owner. No middleman. Family-owned, huge savings, no-pressure sales designed to save you time and money. And now Box Drop Syracuse has sectional sofas and love seats as well, with prices designed to fit your budget. Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofas. Set up your appointment today at boxdropsyracuse.com.
All right, we're back at MC Show Digital. That's our YouTube handle. And please like our video. Also hit the subscribe button. We are live with RotoWire's Joe Bartel. We do this every Friday at 10:30, talking fantasy football. If you have questions, jump into our comments section right now and throw your questions up on the board. We will get to them in the next couple of minutes. Boy Green, you had the next question. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's actually a Joe Bartel trade. We need him to grade his own trade that happened in the Champs League. This one caught me off guard, but between Austin and Joe Bartel, a straight up player for player, which sometimes is rare. You don't always see this. Running back, New England Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson for Quentin Johnston, the LA Chargers wide receiver. Joe, walk us through sort of the behind the scenes of what happened here and ultimately what you think of this.
Yeah, unlike Boy Green, who has to win every trade 90-10, I thought this was relatively even. It's ironic. I'm facing Austin this week, and I'm looking at the lineup like, boy, he really doesn't have a running back at all, a running back too. Like, I mean, I have a bunch of them. I'm speculating on Isaiah Davis's, and I got Blake Corum's of the world. Ramondre Stevenson is playing, at least getting some opportunities, gets the red zone work. We think the Patriots are going to score. Well, what if I just offer Ramondre Stevenson for Quentin Johnston, who I was surprised didn't play last week. That one sort of snuck up on me, and I guess I assumed he wouldn't play this week, although it seems like he's trending in the right direction. So I would rather have Quentin Johnston rest of season, but if somebody needs a running back for this week, Ramondre Stevenson kind of fit. So I thought it was a pretty even 1-for-1 trade. And I would imagine I'll be able to use Johnston as an additional trade piece down the road. But I don't mind, especially as I'm hoping CeeDee Lamb gets back this week, just to get depth for depth and have one of those that I like rest of season a bit more.
Now, Quentin Johnston has about double the points of Ramondre Stevenson so far this year. And we all obviously know what's going on with Travion Henderson. So it's a little puzzling to me that he would want Ramondre to give away a receiver who's been a top 5 receiver this year in fantasy. Was there any trepidation on his part to give away Quentin Johnston here? I know he is a little banged up, might not play this week. Looks like he is, as you said, though. I thought you won this deal handily, Joe.
Yeah.
Steven, I don't think so.
Believe it or not, I never even talked to him. I don't have phone numbers to text people off to the side, so I'm just sending the cold call. Here's the trade on Yahoo,
trade up
and see if somebody accepts it. So yeah, no, I guess you'll have to ask Austin on that one.
I will.
I've watched him make multiple trades with other people getting positions. Doesn't make sense. I thought at least this one you're getting one that you could start for a week in which again he's my opponent. I mean, I have a feel McBride's going to go nuclear and already getting 22 points out of a waiver wire quarterback. I'm pretty sure to lose again this week, and I imagine Ramondre Stevenson, because of the revenge game against my team, will of course go off and prove all you guys wrong.
But a quick follow-up
I was
here.
Just before you jump in, Boy Green.
Yeah.
I was offering a week and a half ago before he decided to get down and dirty with Boy Green. We would talk about Kyron Williams in a Quentin Johnson deal, and instead he gets Ramondre. So I think he should have dealt with me instead of you. He could have got a much better player than he got from you. Boy Green, go ahead, jump right in.
Oh my! Wow. Okay, that's good to know.
A little more 50-50. You know, I was looking for maybe another piece too because I value Kyron pretty highly. But we were talking about that, and Quentin Johnson has really been incredible this year, and I'm kind of been in like, boy, I'd really love to get a receiver that I could just plug and play, and I don't have too many of those on my team. That's where I'm weak. So,
Joe. Let's work out a 3-team trade where you send Tim Quentin Johnson and I land Kyron Williams. Let's figure out the rest. That sounds juicy to me.
That ship has sailed.
Apparently, but no, Joe. In all seriousness, you've mentioned it a few times that you're playing the opponent that you just executed a trade with. What are the fantasy sort of unwritten rules about that? Because of course, no one wants to get clowned.
Right.
At the same time of immediate pay. Why did I just help him out? He's going to do this to me. Because trades, of course, are not week to week. You're normally doing them for season long, especially in our league as well. So there's a couple of battling ideologies here. But what is your process here when you're facing someone, and how that sort of factors into whether or not you pull a trigger on a trade?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think in this league, it could be a really dangerous thing too, when you can get relegated if you're bottom 3. And if I had not won last week, I would be in prime position to go ahead and get relegated. So I think if I don't sneak out that win, I probably end up doing a different decision and just hope that I'm kind of negating, even with the running back depth I have and all the running backs that are being gobbled up by Brian Drake, for example, and a few other folks, that by default, you're only going to get 3 or 4 points out of that position, and maybe that's the difference. But I think Ramondre Stevenson's good for about 10 per game, and I agree with you, Jim, that you could have Quentin Johnston score a bit more than that, and he's been a bit more reliable, but I don't know. I think if I don't win last week, I'm not able to make this trade, but rest of season, I'd rather have Johnston over Stevenson. And it's also a friendly thing too, where it would be great to have a good lineup against a good lineup as opposed to us trying to all deal with stuff. And I think that was part of a factor too, is we're both sitting at 3-3. So that's the way sort of I sliced that trade.
Which makes a lot of sense. Let's go to the fans here. Bubble bad shot. Rashee Rice or Michael Pittman this week, and of course Rashee Rice obviously coming off the suspension.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fantasy experts that are ready to be like, all right, Rashee Rice immediately right into the starting lineup, and I understand that premise. Like, you've waited 6 weeks for this. Most teams probably need to play Rashee Rice, but this is one of the great examples where a guy like Michael Pittman's been super reliable, right? Like 14 plus points per game in full point PPR leagues, and has a Chargers defense this week that is banged up with injury. I don't think Khalil Mack is back just yet. He's going to be back soon, but I think there's going to be a lot of points with the Colts and Chargers game, to the point where last person has the ball wins. And I don't know if I feel that same way about this Raiders team trying to compete with the Chiefs. I know that a couple of years ago they won on Christmas, whatever else like that, but this is a bad Raiders team right now. And the way the Chiefs are playing, you're going to get Rashee Rice involved, but I'd really be surprised if they're going to be immediately kind of throwing the rhythm off of their offense just to satiate Rashee Rice back to the offense. I have been a little bit hesitant to be like, all right, play Rashee Rice everywhere. And in this instance, I'm playing Michael Pittman, even though I think that's contrary to what a lot of fantasy analysts would be saying.
And do you, now that Rashee Rice is returning this week, does every other ancillary Chiefs pass catcher become irrelevant? The Tyquan Thorntons, Hollywood Browns, because Travis Kelce's there too. Like, how do they all factor in?
That's
with
right.
This new piece?
That's a great question. I go back to like the last 2 weeks they've been rolling. I mean, Hollywood Brown's been a factor underneath. You've had Tyquan Thornton still have explosive plays, even when Xavier Worthy's been healthy. You've been doing a lot of the motion stuff for Xavier Worthy to get him out in space, which is perfect. if I'm running the Chiefs offense, great, I think, a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. It does not mean that he immediately gets the Jamar Chase 16 targets. It just means that we're going to use him in conjunction with what the defense is giving us. And there will be points in time, especially as the Chiefs get close to the postseason, where I think you'll want Rashee Rice to be that guy and see what that looks like with your offensive scheme. But I don't think it needs to be the first week coming off a suspension where he had a serious knee injury last year. So I think the Tyquan Thorntons of the world especially will be droppable candidates. I think Hollywood Brown will be as well too. And that it will elevate Xavier Worthy to be even more a fantasy factor. And I think it elevates Travis Kelce. But for a 1 week question where the Chiefs are favored by 12.5 points, I don't see Rashee Rice getting a ton of volume in this week.
All right, again, questions welcome in the comments, so please jump in and ask your questions for Joe Bartel. Trades, lineups, whatever it is, ad drops, waiver wire, it's all out there for you. I'll jump over here to I Am Baldwin 900, who says, I just got offered Saquon for Adams and Dowdle. My other receivers are Lamb, Odunze, Pearsall, and Bourne, so he's pretty stacked at the receiver position. Do you like this trade, Joe?
Perfect example of trading high in Rico Dowdle. I understand with the Lamb, Odunze, Pearsall, Bourne. If Lamb isn't back this week, it makes you vulnerable for 1 week. I do think Lamb plays. At least that's been the reports that we've been hearing. So you still have 3 receivers, whatever the Niner receiver ends up being between Pearsall and Bourne. That's fine. And I'm happy to buy low on Saquon Barkley. I think he's a very obvious and safe floor. And if the Eagles figure out whatever this has been the past couple weeks, I think Saquon Barkley is going to be right back to that point production where you're very happy. Whereas I don't think Rico Dowdle does that too. The Devontae Adams part is interesting because you guys talked about it earlier with Puka Nacua. Theoretically out this week. The Rams, I think, are either on bye this week 8 or week 9. But either way, I don't think Nacua is playing at least for the next 3 weeks. And if that's the case, Devontae Adams benefits. But if it's only 2 weeks with the bye week coming up, I think you're fine saying Puka Nacua kind of gets moved. So that's a win-win trade, I think, for both teams. I'll be happy to take Saquon Barkley.
What do you say for, Breece Hall could be traded? I'm trying to think of other people in the world, like that you try to be proactive ahead of the NFL trade deadline and try to just read the NFL Insider Report, say, who is a interesting fantasy player that may be on a bad team that I could take advantage of and trade for him at his current value before it inevitably just skyrockets because everyone wants a new situation. Like if Breece Hall got traded to the Chiefs tomorrow, I imagine he'd be super attractive immediately. People would want Breece Hall. So, like, how do you factor in any of those potential? Because obviously it's not guaranteed that Breece Hall goes to the Chiefs as a random example, but some of these other players are sort of floating out in the universe, but in their current spot, they're whatever. But in a new spot, maybe, there's an uptick there.
Yeah, I'll go the other way with this. I think Isaiah Davis is the one that everyone should be trying to grab right now because I do think Breece Hall is traded. And if it's to the Chargers or to the Chiefs or maybe the Cowboys want to add more depth, like there's a bunch of teams that I think would be totally fine to add Breece Hall as either the complement or obvious starter to that team, maybe the Commanders, for example, too. And if there's enough of a market in my mind with that rookie contract not being signed, I think Breece Hall is out the door. You're not really able to speculate on the best scenario for Breece Hall to go to. Like, I don't think there's an obvious one that makes his fantasy value significantly better other than just saying, well, he's going to be in a better offense. Okay, great. I don't know how to speculate on what that looks like. I do know that Isaiah Davis in most leagues, not ours, is effectively free. And in that scenario, you can go ahead and get a guy that's free who I think will be a starter and will be the obvious one, especially with Braylon Allen out for a long time. Like I think Isaiah Davis is actually a really good player. So whether the Maliers of the Jets offense will affect him, probably so. But I think Isaiah Davis is the one I'd speculate on. And the other one I keep saying, and I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, Jerome Ford of the Browns. Makes zero sense when Quinshon Judkins is back. Makes zero sense when Dylan Sampson's there. Jerome Ford would be a perfect piece for the Chargers alongside Amari Hampton. And I think Jerome Ford would be the obvious starter over Kamani Vidal and would cost the Chargers effectively nothing outside of salary to go ahead and do that trade. So I think Jerome Ford sees a bump up as well, too. And one of those guys that also is pretty widely available.
Joe, one of the great things about our segment is we get to circle back at things from time to time. And the Manchild promised he would circle back on this kicker situation that you were very critical of a couple of weeks ago. I'd like to just ask you a question now about value. Who is the number one kicker in fantasy right now?
It would be Brandon Aubrey after the number one kicker got hurt during a game that was effectively free. Spencer Schrader, who was never drafted anywhere, gets injured, as if we can project that, and Spencer Schrader would have still been the number one kicker over the guy that was widely being drafted in round 7 and 8. So I think Joey Sly, also widely available, was kicker 3 or 4 for a good time, and that's for the lowly Titans offense as well, too. And Eddie Pinheiro, over the past 3 or 4 weeks, has been the highest scoring kicker since he's taken over the 49ers. All guys that didn't cost Quentin Johnston, who Ramondre Stevenson was a 7th or 8th round pick, and I got for in a trade. I mean, just pointing it out there that there's a bunch of other ways to do it as opposed to taking Brandon Aubrey.
Listen, we'll always disagree on kicker. I mean, I think just like at times we'll disagree on defense.
I came with the receipts.
I've come a little.
He did. Yeah.
Those are fine. We're only in week 7 right now. We're about to enter week 7. I'll check back in week 14 and see how many points he's ahead of every
still
other
been
guy.
Good over the guy that was a 7th or 8th round pick. And I would say the same thing about the defensive conundrum we had last week as well, too. We're going to see multiple defenses off the waiver wire that will be just as good as whatever the Broncos will be for the foreseeable future. Now, again, I didn't envision the Jets literally having negative passing yards. I don't think that's a fair assumption. And I guess for 1 week, that was a great trade. But I have to imagine that hurts the person trading the Broncos defense on this call. So that feels like just punishment in my mind.
Yeah, currently, by the way, Boy Green, just to let you know, keep you plugged in, the Denver defense is number 3 in all of fantasy at the moment. Only 2 points behind 2 other defenses who are tied for number 1. I expect in the next 2 weeks, we'll be circling back to that as well, talking about the Denver defense being the best defense also out there. But I have no complaints about my roster, so nothing really to talk about here. Talk about receipts. Anyway, Joe, what about the fact that the trade deadline is coming up? You brushed on it a little bit before. But who are some players out there that you think, people should maybe be thinking about that could get themselves into a better situation?
Yeah, so I talked about Jerome Ford and Isaiah Davis. I don't want to repeat that again. I'm going to go the other way with this. Do we remember last year who was the big acquisition? I'll pose it to you guys. Do you remember who it was?
I'm terrible with stuff like this. Boy,
Amari Cooper was traded to the Bills, right? And we had this conversation, and universally, it was not just any of my colleagues, but across the fantasy industry. My God, what does this do for Josh Allen? What does this do for Amari Cooper from a fantasy perspective? And I said, historically, a midseason receiver trade has never worked out. Like the last time it was, I think, was 2019 Emmanuel Sanders going from the Broncos to the 49ers. And even then, it wasn't like, here's a number 1 fantasy receiver. So we're hearing reports about your Giants doing dumb things like trading for Chris Olave or Jalen Waddle. I don't know why they would choose to do that other than Joe Shane knows he's on the hot seat. Brian Dable knows he's on the hot seat, which never is good to make those decisions. But let's just go ahead and go down this hypothetical route. Chris Olave or Jalen Waddle are traded to an offense that you think would benefit them. I would say just hold up a minute. And Chris Olave, for example, again, I think he's either 2nd or 3rd now outside of the Thursday game, 2nd or 3rd in the NFL in targets right now. It hasn't been great. He's not scoring touchdowns, but he's getting a ton of volume. He's a guaranteed floor, much in the same way we were talking about Saquon Barkley earlier. That cost a 6th round pick. Okay, great. He goes to the Giants. He would make the Giants offense better. Do I think Chris Olave immediately becomes the number 1 receiver for the Giants? No. And people are going to say, here's the draft capital traded for him. The Giants have to make it work. Well, how about Chase Claypool when he was traded to the Bears for a 2nd round pick? That never happened either. Like historically, midseason trades, no matter how good the receiver is, don't end up being fantasy value. Now, I have Chris Olave in the Champs League. Please trade for Chris Olave. He's going to be awesome wherever he ends up going for. You should definitely give up a lot of draft capital for me or compensation. But if you're in any other leagues out there, don't overreact to the midseason receiver trade because, again, it often has not worked out the way that people seem to assume. And I think Amari Cooper was a perfect example last year.
Yeah. All right, let's get some fantasy questions in here before we sign off. Yes, back-to-back shot, Tony Pollard or Travis Etienne?
Yeah, I think the dead cat bounce will benefit the Titans at some point, but not in a revenge game against Mike Vrabel. I think I'll play Travis Etienne. I don't feel awesome about it, obviously, but Tajay Spears has been getting more work now since he's been off of injured reserve, and just if that's the bad offense and not getting pass-catching opportunities, I have to play Etienne over Pollard.
Okay.
Plus they love London, too. The Jags love London. Yeah, they always play well over there, it seems. So you might get a little bonus bump there.
Yeah, let's go to LeBron's on YouTube. 16-man league. Good Lord. God bless you, sir. I have Rico starting and need someone for my last flex. Hubbard or Charbonnet?
Yeah, so either both the Panthers running backs, or end up being Charbonnet.
Yikes.
You know what? I might just play both Panther running backs.
Yeah, me too.
I have not seen any sort of positive notion for this Jets defense. I really haven't. And the way that they're both running right now and the way they're using that rushing attack, I don't feel great about it, but I might just go ahead and say I'm going to get at least one running back, one production out of one of these guys. No idea who it is, but let's just see if I can roll the dice and get one.
All right, bad shot. What's a tight end that I can pick up on the waiver wire?
Aronde Gadsden was one of those. I know Brian Drake's been talking about it for a couple weeks now, but I think he got his career high in snaps played and also targets last week. That's the way I would choose to do things if I was Chargers. You have Joe Alt injured, Rashawn Slater done for the season. Trey Pipkins didn't play. They've been switching at center now. Like if the answer is here's the offense line being crap, let's get the ball out quickly, and you have Labikanki, you have Keenan Allen, but you have to have the tight ends into block or get out for 3 or 4 yard routes. And Aronde Gadsden, I think, is really good after the catch. He's widely available, at least he was on Monday. And then Harold Fannin now with the Browns tight end, David Njoku, I think out for at least this week with a knee injury. Dylan Gabriel can only throw 5 yards and only throw in the middle of the field. That's where Harold Fannin benefits. Again, though, the weather part of it, very nerve-wracking for me. It could be up to 25-mile-per-hour winds and rain. I want nothing to do with that if I can help it. The last one would be Michael Mayer of the Raiders, again, with the Chiefs going to be, well, the Chiefs heavy favorites, but also Brock Bowers probably not playing. Michael Mayer was widely available everywhere too.
All right, this isn't a question, it's a statement, but Jamie the FedEx guy says, Joe's proclamation is coming true. I'm on the move. You talked about him in our fantasy league and that his shitty record versus what it could potentially, if he starts stacking wins, look at that roster. And Jamie is appreciating.
I think his team is, I really do. I think his team is good. Whether it be like 5th or 6th seed playoff, wherever. To me, I look at a lot of these teams. I think my team is worse than his right now. I would feel very comfortable saying Jamie is not going to be in the bottom 3 when it's all said and done. I think he made a lot of really good moves. The Dwight Schrute paperclip method has seemed to work for Jamie's team, and I have actually a lot of confidence that he will be in the playoff mix by the end of the season.
And this comment coming back on the Olave thing, did I get that right? Yeah, disagree with Olave. I think he would be number 1 on the Giants after a couple of weeks. I'll speak about it from a non-fantasy, Joe, because I was actually very excited as a Giant fan to hear that the Giants would actually do something in a year where they're probably not going anywhere. But then that transition to next year where you have Neighbors and, say, an Olave or a Waddle alongside each other really gives Jackson Dart some weapons. So you're speaking about it from fantasy perspective. I'll tell you from a fan perspective, let's make one of these deals. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So 2 different things, right?
It would make the Giants' offense better. I actually think Olave will make the Giants' offense better, more so than Amari Cooper was last year for the Bills. But we have goldfish brain, not you guys, but just collectively, like, think about the conversations we were literally having about Amari Cooper last year, who is not a Hall of Fame player, but was a Pro Bowl caliber receiver, had one of the better years from just the year prior with the Browns, and that was supposed to make Josh Allen better. It helped the Bills. I think it allowed for a lot of other things for that offense to do that they couldn't do previously. And to your point, Manchild, I think that's what Olave can do as well. But will Olave immediately become even higher fantasy relevancy? Absolutely not. And I would almost argue, again, with the concussion history that he has, that I would be willing very easily to sell high to any Giants fan who thinks this is going to be a major benefit fantasy-wise for him.
Fair enough. Joe, I'll be keeping receipts too, but some good receipts you dropped on me there today. We'll see how that kicker thing works out by the time this year ends. All right, my friend. Always great to talk to you. We'll talk to you again next week. Good luck this weekend.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. There he is. The one, the only Joe Bartel. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. I'm not sure what it is. We have a lot of things dropping this week. Just go to our YouTube channel at MC Show Digital. Take care, everybody.